So it's chapter 12, and I'm going to read the first verse. And it says, "And Job answered and said," okay, so some of y'all hadn't been here. Who is he talking to? What did he say? Who is he saying it to? If you haven't been here, and I know some of you hadn't, we have so far went through and seen Job. He was high and mighty, and Job, God told everybody that he was, the greatest man on the land. He was one of his, top men. And, that he let the devil have his way with him. And now Job is in an ash heap outside of town, and he's lost all of his cattle, all of his family. His wife's done told him to curse God and die, and he's covered in boils. He's got worms and all this other stuff. It explains it real good. But his three friends come out and sits with him, and I think it went 7 days, and the friends started speaking up. Job had proclaimed and said, "I wished I'd never been born. I wished I was dead," and all this stuff. And pretty much said that, I don't deserve what I'm getting. And it kind of pierced the hearts of the three friends that was with him. So they started, talking back to him. So far, we have heard Eliphaz say something to Job, and Job responds. And then you see Bildad would say something, and Job responds. And now Zophar, this is chapter 11, Zophar had stood up and said something to Job, and they all pretty much have the same message. And it's, "Job, if you wasn't a sinner, you wouldn't be going through this." Well, all of us know, his friends don't know, but all of us know from the first two chapters that Job wasn't a sinner. He was just and an upright man. That means he's not, I'm not saying that he's not a sinner, but he would do the atonements and all the things that would come with, coming up short in life. Being just and upright don't necessarily mean you're not a sinner. But Job has been, Job's lost everything that he's got. He's lost his health, and he's pretty much thinking that he's going to die. And to add to it, you got your three best friends that have come from all around just to kick you while you're down. And Job is getting, he's getting tired of it, and you'll see it. He gets a little bit sarcastic in verse 2, but Job answers up and says to Zophar, and Zophar is a dogmatic type person. If you go back and read a lot, Eliphaz seen this big dream, and this is how he got all his wisdom. And then Bildad says, "Hey, you go back and look at the times past. You go back." He was real smart. He was a history buff. He learned from the old folks. And now Zophar is just dogmatic, and that means, what I believe is right, and you have to live by it. And I don't really have to explain it. You just have to live by it. It is the way that it is. And that's kind of the way Zophar is. So Job comes back and answers Zophar. And y'all really need to read up to chapter 12 and it's very redundant. It's the same thing over and over. And this is part of the poetry. I think chapter 3 all the way to chapter 40 something is all poetry in there. That's why it's close to all of the rest of the poetries and the Psalms and all that. But he comes back and he answers. He says, "No doubt," this is verse 2, "but ye are the people, and wisdom shall die with you." And what he's saying is, like, you the man. When you die, there will be no more wisdom on earth because y'all are just so wise. And he's being a smart aleck here. And then this is why he says that. Verse 3, he says, "But I have understanding as well as you. I am not inferior to you. Yeah, who knoweth not such things as these?" Job's saying, you know what? All this stuff that you said, and you got to go back and read it because it's a lot of good stuff, but it don't pertain to Job because of the circumstance. Job was not just a vile sinner. He really didn't deserve what he was getting, but they see the outside, and that's all they could judge is what, you're sick, so you're a sinner, Job. And we know, I'm just going to point this out. He says, I have understanding as well as you. He goes, you don't know anything that I don't know. I know all this. Who knoweth not such things as these? This is what I wanted to point out. Every time, and I've had to sit down with people. It don't happen often, but I've actually had to sit down with people, and they want my opinion on stuff. Should I quit smoking or should I quit drinking? And I read this verse, and it kind of lays heavy on my heart because you know what you need to do. Should we get divorced? That had been asked to me before. How do I stop? What do I need to stop this? Is it okay to drink beer? I mean, it says right here, and most of the time, unless it's like a Bible question, most of the time you just like, dude, you know what you need to do. It's like,
if you're asking the question, you already know the answer.
You already know the answer.
The way they want you.
That's exactly right, and this is what'll happen: is they'll ask this person, they don't get the answer they want, so they go ask another person. They go ask this person, then they start jumping church to church, and they're wanting to just get by with whatever they're doing, and somebody say, hey, it's okay if you watch porn, or if it's okay if you cuss, or it's okay. Jesus died for you. You're saved. You can do whatever you want to do. That's what they want to hear, and that's not the way it is. But I'm chasing a rabbit there for a second, but that struck a nerve with me, and we know what we need to be doing. If you'll do what you know, you'll always know what you're doing. Does that make sense? If you can do, and it's not hard to understand. It's just hard to do. You know what I mean? You know what to do, but the hard part is doing it.
Well, and another thing is if they can't if somebody can't look at your life, my life, and see where we've been, and see where we at now, just like Jesse, asking Justin, but this here says that I have understanding. You know what that understand, and ain't this something? Now that word understanding means a heart. It says, but I have, let's see, understand, don't that mean a heart?
Yep.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I don't know how.
You got a heart?
Yeah, well, when you
Understanding in a heart, I've never.
when you come up with something from your heart, you know what's good and what's bad. You know what I mean?
Goes back to it.
Yeah. I think that's what he's saying. I think that's how it should be translated.
Brain uses it.
Yeah. There's a lot of difference between having common sense and being smart, okay?
Then they put a plug in for Sunday. Y'all come in and learn about the fruit of the Spirit.
There's also another tidbit of information that we need to suck out of this verse. It says, I am not inferior to you. When we talk to somebody, it's either Paul or Jesus. I can't remember exactly where it is, but he says, you esteem others. You go to others and think of them higher than you are. You don't put people down. You put people up here. If you think about it, when you talk to somebody, they could do something better than you can. Something in their life, they could do it better than you. You need to put them up here. Everybody is created equal. You putting people down here, and that's not a way. That's not the way a Christian should be. You esteem people. You put them up here, and if they don't deserve it, you know what? You'll just get a crown for it at the end of the day. And when I say end of the day, is when you go to heaven. So, okay. 4, I am as one mocked of his neighbor, who calleth upon God, and he answereth him. the just, upright man is laughed and scorned, or laughed to scorn. And we see that. You go, and we all want to be closet Christians because we don't want people to think about, how they think about us because we go to church. There's just some people you won't open up your mouth around. And Paul says that, the fear of man bringeth a snare. And that's true. You don't want people to look at you and mock you because the world thinks that Christians are stupid. If you just look at our worldview, you believe in fairy tales and talking donkeys and, all this stuff. You believe in stuff you can't even see. You're a bunch of idiots. And that's how I felt too when I was lost. But you don't want to be thought of as being stupid or being mocked. And we see this. Even today we see this. We're mocked. And Job was a man of God. He was up here. And God thought good of him. But no, they're mocking him. Another good example. What did they do to Jesus? They mocked him.
Yep.
That's just like you go in a restaurant and sit down with family to eat, and you sit there and say your prayer, and everybody's sitting there watching you. Seems like it would have an effect on them that they like, well, they're doing it, it might be worthwhile. But it don't phase them.
Now, I have had people that walked up and put their hand on the table and, I noticed you praying, I appreciate seeing stuff like that. That's happened to me a few times.
I've never.
Yeah. But it's always a preacher or something, but,
With this, I guess, really giving what's in your heart to the others that sat down to partake in breaking the bread.
We should be that light. We should be. We shouldn't be scared. That's the main reason we don't go to places like the nursing home. We're scared to go, or the devil puts things in our past that's just, you're too busy to go to the nursing home and talk to those old folks.
Well, them people don't want to listen to all that stuff.
Yep, that's what the devil will put in your head.
It's tied down. I ran into two at one time, and boy, they was after each other. They tore each other up over that TV. About changing that thing down. Seriously.
The next verse is a kind of a complicated verse to explain, but I'm going to tell you what it means. He says, this is verse 5, he that is ready to slip with his feet is as a lamp despised in the thought of him that is at ease. A newer translation, which I wouldn't recommend going and just reading and living by, but it kind of breaks it down and it makes a little bit of sense in the way that it's worded, but this is our earthly type of view on how this is deciphered. People who are at ease mock those in trouble. I think that was the verse before it. They give a push to those who are stumbling, and that's the idea. The whole he that is ready to slip with his feet is a lamp despised. He's like shutting off the dark, putting them in the dark, and he's going to make them trip and fall kind of deal.
Most of the people that's like that think they're at ease, think they got it made and all, they don't have that godly spirit that they need.
Mm-mm.
Because if you're not walking with God, the devil ain't gonna bother you. If you're walking with the devil, he ain't gonna mess with you. So they think they got it made, so they don't want to go out here and they see somebody that's stumbling, that makes them want to, make fun of them.
Yeah. Or say, at least I'm not like that, or
Yeah.
yeah, and that's what that verse is talking about. That's what it means. And the people that are at ease, they're only at ease because of a false sense of security, like money, or they're in good health, or they ain't never been sick, or they ain't never had a flat tire. I mean, nothing never ever bad happened to them. You have a real false you have a false sense of security. if you ain't never had to depend on God, you're not going to know what you're missing out on. That's why God puts some of the trials that we have on us, so we can depend on Him and say, hey, we need Him.
14:2 breaks that down. It explains it all, just easy.
You got it right there in front of you?
Well, it told me to go to Proverbs 14:2, and it says, he that walketh in his uprightness feareth the Lord, but he that is perverse in his ways despiseth him. And that just goes right.
Yep,
Despiseth.
that makes a lot of sense.
And if you go to Psalm 73:12, it says, behold, they are ungodly who prosper in the world, and they increase in riches.
That's Psalms. Where did you read yours from?
Proverbs 14.
You do realize that both of those was written several hundred years after Job.
Yeah,
So think about that.
yeah.
What kind of insight people have gotten from Job over the years. And 6, he says, the tabernacles of robbers prosper, and they that provoke God are secure, into whose hands God bringeth abundantly. And this is what trips Job up. He's saying that these high and mighty people are tripping up the people that are, the Christians or the people that are down here. And the whole thing that trips him up is, those kind of people are prospering. And it don't make sense. You're saying that I'm a sinner because I'm sick. But you got the sinners and the robbers and whatever, their tabernacles, that means their tents, their houses, are prospering. And this really, if you live by the thought of, I'm blessed by how good that I am, it don't make no sense. There's even a song about it. How does that song go? We'll know all about it when we know. No, we'll know all about it when we get wherever. You know what I'm talking about? We'll know all. It talks about the sinners prospering and why. I mean, why?
Yeah, I know that.
And this is something.
Cars, live in all fine houses, and
You got to think. This is the first Bible, our first book of the Bible, and Job had a problem with this. And it's still the same way. Why do the sinners prosper? And we've got God on this level to where if you're a sinner, you should be judged right immediately. And that ain't the way that it is sometimes.
How do they know it ain't the devil giving all them for them to backslide from following Jesus?
That may be it. But, a lot of times you'll see the judgment happen in their lifetime. But you got to remember, even if they die in their prosperity, when they get in front of the pearly gates or get in front of God, it's not going to be a ceremony like we're going to have. It's going to be a judgment, and it's going to be bad. And that's where we have to say, hey, and not be jealous. What is the earth? Why should we have to keep up with the Joneses and be jealous of earthly stuff when we have a mansion waiting for us? You see what I'm saying? And the only thing they'll have is what's here. It ain't going to be something there.
That's why Jesus said, lay up your riches in heaven and not on there.
But, Job had a problem, and he's noticed it, and he had a problem with it, and he brings it up because they are saying, hey, Job, you're a sinner. That's why you're going through this stuff. Well, he brings this up. That's Job's a smart cat. He's way smarter than they're giving him credit for. 7, but ask now the beast, and they shall teach thee, and the fowls of the air, and they shall teach or tell thee. O speak to the earth, and it shall teach thee, and the fishes of the sea shall declare unto thee. And that's that. He probably said this in rebuke to the thing that Zophar said to him about being an empty-headed donkey. Hey, you're an empty-headed donkey. But you know what? He's saying, even if you look at the beast, you go look at the empty-headed donkey. He stays alive and he takes care of himself. Where's that verse about, hey, you sluggard, you go look at the ant and observe its ways and all this stuff? You'll have to go Google it and go read it. He says, go look at her ways and observe. That's worth looking up because it goes right along with this. And ants, believe it or not, are way smarter than you think they are. Ants, did you know that ants, and it says look at her ways? I wish I knew where it was. We'd go and read it just for the sake of reading it because it's good. Did you know the ants that you see are females? None of them are males. The males only last a few days just to recreate. And a lot of them don't even need males. They just clone themselves.
Like the queen bee.
Yeah, they usually can clone themselves without even needing a male. But they'll go to war. Ants go to war with each other. The female queen ant will even go with the fighting ants. What are they called?
Proverbs 6, 6 through 8.
Look it up, Richard, and read it to us. The queen ant will even go out when they're at war and put out a pheromone so the other ants will, calm down so they could just, take over the whole other colony. It's amazing. Ants plant gardens and stuff in there and have, stuff growing in there to eat. They have pesticides. So they have, look at this, they'll even get caterpillars and stuff and milk them and keep them as livestock.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when they move, they'll take the caterpillars with them to the next place they move to. They're way smarter than you think they are, and that's what.
Growing up, if we had 2 ant beds out in the yard, one on this side of the yard and one over here, Mom would say, "Get that shovel and bring me that top part of that ant bed, or you get down in there and get that queen or whatever. Bring me the top part first. Bring her the top part, and the whole time she's over there, got the other top part of the other ant bed." So she said, "Chunk that on top of that ant bed," and then she chunks that on top where they can go to war. And you know what? It can get rid of them ant beds because they will work till they kill that thing.
The ants believed in slavery. The ants are amazing, and I actually studied that Proverbs and taught the kids one time. That's the only reason I remember all this stuff. The ants would enslave other ant beds. They'd go in and kill all the things, steal the larvae, bring them back, and make them slaves. That's crazy.
Does that work?
Mama just phoned it, and I just did it, and I still do it today.
I think that's crazy. And the Bible tells you about this stuff before you could go and analyze it and look at it with magnifying glasses and science.
And they will travel distances to get food or whatever. It's amazing. I've looked up a little of it.
I think that it's wild that something that was wrote 4,000 years ago tells you to go look at the female ants' ways, and that's all that's out. I mean, who knows how to tell whether an ant's a male or a female 4,000 years ago?
Monday, that exterminator come down here, and I tell you about the ants we got in here. Me and him both walking all the way around this
Didn't
church.
see one.
The ants were coming in by that door over there. But do you know where they were coming from? That telephone pole up there? They were going up the telephone pole, across that wire, to the church, down the church, around the church, and through that door. With that telephone pole. He found the
They travel
nest.
along.
He found the nest up there beside that pole.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Scouting, wasn't he?
And sprayed the pole and all.
That's what Job is saying, though. He goes, now the beast, but ask the beast.
Well, if you think about it, squirrels are the same way.
Yeah.
You've got a pine tree in our front yard, and they'll come from miles to that tree. They've got paths. They'll walk the power lines, the telephone lines. They've got routes that they'll come into that tree. I've got the one now, when I open the front door, they scout.
Yeah.
No one?
You shoot at them.
They know what's
He'd
coming.
stay out in the yard all the time, we'd have some pecans, he'd go.
I can't stay out in the yard all the time. But God created animals to have that instinct.
Yeah, they do.
It's crazy. You can look at the earth. You can pick up rocks and tell what's happened to the earth by the rock. Was water right here at one time? Was there a fire? Was there? I mean, he's saying, look at your surroundings. They could teach you that there's something bigger than just us. This stuff was created. It'll teach you about God, and that's what he's saying. And he's saying, look at the fishes. There's bigger fishes that eat the little fishes. They're aggressive.
Yeah, but scientists are trying to take it back too far.
Yeah.
Trying to say, God didn't create the world, God created the world.
Well, even if you've got these methods of, evolution, I mean, who created the first thing?
I love watching shows on TV.
Yeah, it's and it all goes back to the verse where it says, "Hey, I'm not inferior to you." Everybody thinks we're a bunch of idiots. They mock us and they make fun of us and all that stuff. Verse 10, in whose hand is the soul of every living thing. And this is what he's talking about. He says, you go look at all these animals, and, they have a soul. They're in God's hand, and they breathe of all mankind. Doeth not the ear try words? And he goes, can't you hear, is what that means. And the mouth tastes his meat. And the difference between spoiled and good and, sweet and sour. He's saying, can you hear and can you taste? I mean, that wasn't just something that happened. It was given to you. With the ancient is wisdom, and that's talking about the older people. And in the length of days is understanding. Okay, so this is another thing, another point to point out is just because somebody's young don't mean that they're stupid. There's a lot of old people that don't believe and don't know nothing about the Bible. And then there's a lot of young people that know more than what you think they would know. So I wanted to point that out. But, usually, like Daryl, I hope one day I'll know that much. And that's what he's saying. With the ancient, and Daryl is ancient. I wish he was here. Is wisdom.
Yes.
And in length of days is understanding. Now, here's the big kicker. Verse 13, it starts with God's strength and wisdom. Okay, so wisdom is the knowledge. Understanding is understanding. That goes back to verse 2 when we said, when was it? It was number 3. When we say we know better to do than what we need to be doing, but we ask and ask and ask and want the answer that we want, we have the understanding, but we don't have the strength. And that's where God's strength comes into play. 13, with him is wisdom and strength. Now we're making sense of the whole thing. If you're looking at it like that, you want somebody to give you advice. You want the wisdom, but where's the strength to do what you're supposed to be doing going to come from? It ain't going to be able to come from you. You're going to live by the flesh. You're going to do what the flesh wants you to do. The strength is going to come from God.
You got to have the knowledge of God's word and the wisdom of God's word to get the strength to understand God's word.
That's right.
And it says that he has the counsel and the understanding. He's able to make it happen, and he knows how things work. When we want to quit smoking, for instance, and you go ask somebody, hey, is it a sin to smoke or not to smoke? Or drinking, is it a sin to drink or not to drink? Or, having relations before you're married, you want to have somebody say it's okay. Is it okay to be gay? You want somebody to tell you, hey, it's okay. And you want the understanding when deep down you know the understanding. And when you get saved or when you meet God, then you have the strength to actually make the understanding able to happen. And he's got the counsel. That means he's got He's the ability to make it happen and the understanding, and it gives some examples.
He's talking about God in there.
Yeah, that's talking about God's wisdom.
Well, when we were kids growing up, we were taught that by our parents.
Yes.
Parents now don't have time with their kids,
Oh, yes.
so they don't get a lot of it taught to them.
Yeah.
Or
Sad.
if you're a parent that teaches your kid you shouldn't do this, that, and the other, but you're a parent that does them things, then what good are you doing?
Yeah.
You can't tell them what not to do and you do it.
They do
The,
it, how did I do?
Yeah, it's your actions is what they're gonna take.
Good examples, Jason. Do you think if he wouldn't have never come to church and reestablished his relationship with God, do you think he would have ever got off drugs?
Nope.
No, that's where your strength comes from. Jason knew better than to be doing the drugs to start with. He had the wisdom that was there. The strength is from him. He gives some examples. We'll try to get through this so we can go. It's 4 minutes till. And the examples are kind of cut and dry. Behold, he withholdeth the waters, and they dry up, and we see that. We see droughts. Lakes dry up because it don't rain. Also, he sendeth them out, and they overturn the earth. He's talking about floods, and the floods. We're working on a truck at the shop that a dam broke when it rained. All that rain a few months ago, and it washed out a whole thing, washed the barn down, and took this old truck and put it in a lake. It turns up the earth. The water's a big deal, and God controls the water. With him, 16, with him is strength and wisdom. The deceived and the deceiver are his. He's saying, if you've ever been tricked, he knows about it, and he's going to take care of you. And the guy that tricked you or deceived you, he knows about it, and he's going to take care of him, and he's going to be just about it. And that's what he's saying. He knows what's going on. He's omnipotent. 17, he leadeth counselors away spoiled, and maketh the judges fools. If you want to replace that with captured, it's kind of hard to not necessarily captured, but confused. Counselors are supposed to be able to help people. So, you go to a counselor and they're not able to help you, he's not a good counselor. He's spoiled. He can do that. He can make somebody that's supposed to be helpful useless. And on the other hand, he can make a judge or maketh the judges fools. And a judge is supposed to be somebody that's wise, and he can make him an idiot. And that's what he's saying. He can do all these things. 18, he looseth the bonds of kings, and girdeth their loins with the girdle. And this is another analogy of, he takes a king off his throne, or he could gird their loins. That means he could make things that they want. He could, encumber them or make things that he wants to happen is the idea here. So if he wants to take over this land, he can make it happen. Or if he wants to get him impeached, if you want to put it as the what's it called, the president. If he wants the president to be impeached, he'll get impeached. They're trying. But if he wants him to stay there and go to war with Iraq, you know what? That's what'll happen. And that's what he's saying in a sense. We didn't have, they didn't have presidents then. They had kings. But he leadeth, loosens bond. I didn't mark my thing. 19. He leadeth princes away spoiled, and overthroweth the mighty. Princes are supposed to inherit and be kings. He could, make them go out and be poor, and he can overthrow the mighty. And the mighties are the higher ups. He could just overthrow them, and they'll be something. They'll be lower than they are supposed to be. And this is all, you got to remember, this is all poetry. He removeth away the speech of the trusty, and taketh away the understanding of the aged. And I think this is a blow to the ones that he's talking to, because obviously, they're not understanding the whole idea of what's going on here.
If he's talking about discrimination too, against the,
Discrimination.
against the old and the young.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
when you get so old, you know, they take it away from you because, you know, they think you're too old to do what you need to be doing. And that's what he's talking about.
21, he poureth contempt upon princes and weakeneth the strength of the mighty. 22, he discovereth deep things out of the darkness, and he bringeth out to light the shadows of death. You know, you can't do nothing without it being brought to the light, and you know, the things that are been hid all these times, he can bring them, he can find them even though that you hid them, kind of a thing. He increaseth the nations and destroy them. Now, we've seen this before all throughout history. He makes this big nation big, and it falls. That's God's plan. He straightens them again, and that means straighteneth them again. It tightens them up. He makes them big again, or helps them again. He taketh away the heart of the chief of the people and the earth. The chief of the people would be like our president, and the heart being that what we were talking about earlier, knowing the good to do. And he calls them to wander in the wilderness where there is no way. And you can see a good example of that in the book of Daniel. You remember when Daniel talks to Nebuchadnezzar and he says, I can't remember how it goes now, but you know, Nebuchadnezzar says, I did this and I did that and I did this. And Daniel had warned him. And what God does to Nebuchadnezzar is makes him wander out in the field for, it don't really explain the amount of time it was. I'd have to go back and read it, but you can't really figure out the time span there. But it was long enough for his hair to be like eagle's feathers or something like that, and his fingernails to be like bird claws. I think that's what he said. You go back and read it. That's a really good example of this right here. I bet you if you went down and looked at this footnote, it'd be there. They grope in the dark, and this is the lost person. They grope in the dark without light, and he maketh them to stagger like a drunken man. And that was the conclusion of chapter 12. Anybody that's lost, anytime you see this being in the dark, that's, you know, Jesus said he is the light. And anytime you're in the dark, you're not exposed to the light, so you don't really, you're lost. That's pretty much what it is.
Anytime you're in dark, you're in sin.
Yep.
Even though it's daytime and in noontime, if you're in the dark, you're in sin.
You can see all this. You can see the judges being not what they're supposed to be nowadays. I mean, and it's part of God's plan, even though it don't make any sense. It just is what it is, and there's a bigger picture you can't see. And that's what really the whole book of Job is about, because Job never gets the answer to the question of why good people suffer, or why, you know, people that are upright have to go through horrible things. It's never answered.
Just to make them strong.
It's to build them up. I mean, even if they die, I mean, they don't. Why do little kids die of cancer? It's part of a bigger plan. You don't see. And by the time we get to chapter 43, you'll see that God's making it apparent that, you know what, I'm God. You don't need to know. And we've said it several times. If he was small enough to figure out, he wouldn't be big enough to worship. So.
Have y'all ever
He does
noticed
the
that
same